Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. I hope you're all having a great day. my day started off quite funny because Linda every morning sends me an email on a Monday. Only on a Monday. That's right, everyone. She's not stalking me. On a Monday morning before we do our live show, Linda will send me a lovely, hello Daniel, here's the link to the live question document and whatever, and it's just the way we prep for the live show. And do you know what? And Linda, I'll tell you this because I emailed Linda after I'd done all this. I still don't know how I deleted that email. And I then later went, where did that email go? I didn't reply to that email. And so I then sent Linda a fresh email because I read the email. I remember reading the email, and it was referencing we've had some really like 1 in 500 year floods in a part of Australia here, and Linda was referencing those floods. And anyway, I said in the email, this is not a good start to my week when I'm doing like deleting emails that I know I've read. I was supposed to anyway. I hope your week hasn't started like that, or I hope your weekend is not finishing like that, because many of you are still in your weekend. Apart from all of that, I'm good. I'm good. We have got a Q&A show today, so we've got questions already starting to be asked in the chat, which is great. Bradley Munro, the music man, has already got his question in there. You can put your question into the live chat as well, and we'll do our best to answer your live question. The very first question we're going to answer today is from the Piano Man from last week, and a really interesting question. We'll get to that in a moment. Just want to quickly tell you about what's coming up in the show, as in the coming weeks. So next week we've got a special guest, Edrie Means Weekly. Edrie is a statesperson in the world of voice teaching. She's based in the US. She is a co-founder of the I want to say, now I go to say it, I'm going to get it wrong. She works with Matthew. Remember, we've had Dr. Matthew Edwards here on the show many times. Well, she works in team with him, and I hope I'm getting that right. I'm pretty sure that's right. Anyway, she is a highly regarded expert in vocal training, and so next week what we're going to be talking about is, you know how often, and I do, have to respond to this question a lot, particularly in the early stages for people who are developing their voices, having lessons, is where is the connection between the technique and the artistry? Because we all want to sing better, right? We always want to perform better, but how do we get the technique in there so that, when we're doing exercises, how does that all connect? How does that all work? Anyway, so we're going to unpack that a bit next week, and I can't think of anyone better to do that with than Edrie. The week after that, we're going to do a mini topic. This is on the 9th of June, Southern Hemisphere, Australian Eastern Standard Time, 9th of June. We're going to be looking at the art of emotional expression. I want to talk with us about how do we emote on within a piece, and how do we get that through, and from stage to audience. And in fact, in our live poll question, you can see it on the screen there. What is your biggest flex as a singer? And there's quite a few. I'm just looking at the results, everyone. It's a bit of an even spread so far. We've had 8 votes. And one of those options is owning the stage presence. And part of stage presence is the ability to formulate emotion. And so we'll look at that a bit. And you've got some other options there too today to, isn't it funny, just referencing the question that we've got in our just bit of fun. The poll is just a bit of fun today. Isn't it? It's so easy for us to, sometimes our question, the question we have for the poll is directed to our weaknesses. What is the area that you most need to develop, yada, yada, yada. It can be harder, I think, for us to nominate what are our strengths. And that's exactly what this question is asking of us. What is your vocal strength? We all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. But it's all too easy to recognize our weaknesses. And sometimes we're a bit backwards about, celebrating what do you do well? And that's kind of what this question is doing. So don't hesitate to answer the question because you feel nervous about putting out there what, it's anonymous. No one knows what you've ticked in the end. Anyway, so that's in 2 weeks. We're doing the mini topic. Then we've got Sharon Tree, my very, very personal friend, great singing teacher down in Canberra, my nation's capital. And Sharon will be joining us. I'll be honest with you and say we haven't chosen a topic yet, but I'm sure we'll get to one. And then we're going to finish the term off with a Q&A. So we've definitely got the next 4 weeks lined up. And I'm looking forward to spending each of those sessions with you. And I think that will be really cool. And do you know what? I don't think we've got any other noteworthy pieces of news this week. We're up to 10 votes. You know how I like to get to 21. Wouldn't it be cool? Won't it be cool? Let's be proactive and positive. Won't it be cool if we get to a point where 21? That's a slow day. I'd love to get to 21 votes if we can. Now, the question that that I was letting you know about from last lesson, I'm just going to bring this down. I've listed it in. Look at how clever I am, Linda. I put the question in so I could put it up. Last week, Piano Man asked, any thoughts of advice for a singer with idiopathic subglottic stenosis? And I saw the question and I purposefully thought, I can't answer that with any sense of justice in the immediate. So, and it wasn't really applicable to our special guest who joins us last week. So I chose not to answer the question in the moment, but I do want to answer it now because I actually had to go and do a little bit of some research to really make sure my thinking was right around this particular topic. And you might go, well, what is idiopathic subglottic stenosis? So I'll map it out for you. Idiopathic means that there's sort of no known cause. The cause is unknown. And so we don't know what brings this about. Interestingly, it's most common, not only, but most common in perimenopausal women. And from the research I did, when we say it's uncommon, like it happens in like 1 in every 400,000 people. Like that's pretty rare, right? Subglottal, so we don't know the cause typically. Subglottal means it literally is happening below the vocal folds, down in the upper part of the trachea. And stenosis means narrowing. Yeah, so we've got an uncommon situation happening with pretty much an unknown cause, and it's a narrowing below the vocal folds. So you can understand how this could be a challenge for a singer, right? And I guess by the way, it's non-malignant. So it is a chronic health issue, as in it'll last, typically it lasts, for a long time. It has an impact on the individual suffering from it for an extended period of time. We're not talking days. or weeks. Often it is an issue that goes a lot longer. And it can lead to breathlessness. I've written a whole heap of notes here, so if you see me looking down, I am looking at notes. And rather, as you can think, if there's a narrowing of the airway, then we're going to have limited airflow, right? You can already start to see where the challenges are going to be for us with singing. So one of the first things, first and foremost, as a singing teacher, my job is firstly not to diagnose, nor is it to treat the subglottic stenosis, because that's just not in my lane. My job is to help the singer who wants to continue singing with that known issue. My job, and any singing teacher that you might work with, is to help you to to explore what is still possible. And we do that first and foremost through improving, developing efficient breath flow. And if you're a singer that has had this, and obviously we're talking, if Piano Man is asking this, then I can only think that Piano Man is perhaps suffering from this. And I know, given that this is so rare, 1 in 400,000 people suffer from it, many of you watching are going, this has no application to me. No, but it is interesting for us to talk about these vocal health conditions that people can face and to have a bit of knowledge around them. The challenge of the breath, say the sufferer has already established really good breath flow and good breath management for singing. They have established good breath management for singing with a voice that is not suffering from any, pathological concerns. When we then have issues like this arise, then we have to adjust and be responsive to the new situation. One of the things that can trigger that narrowing for a person suffering from subglottic stenosis is too high a breath pressure. And so a singer is going to probably want to avoid really heavy activity like belt. And you go, oh, well, then the game's over. We're not allowed to sing, place the voice under excessive load. Well, no, it may prove to limit repertoire choice. It could, and it probably would. But that means you just have to go exploring a whole, there's still hundreds and hundreds of millions of songs that you could learn that do not require that level of really heavy vocal load. It's all about reducing the pressure immediately below the vocal folds. And you do want to be attentive to things like fatigue, breathlessness, and you're probably going to go looking for extra vocal breaks, really giving the whole system more downtime than a person who, the general public who don't suffer from this. Again, I want to really stress that a condition like this needs to be managed closely by ear, nose and throat doctor, preferably a laryngologist, perhaps a speechy, and the singing teacher is just someone that is sitting on the edge of that care and providing an opportunity for the singing to be ongoing, but with the view to exploring with a really open hand what can we do, and so to take a very proactive approach to it. But the things to avoid is you're not going to power through it. That is going to lead to issues. We're going to avoid extended belting or forceful projection. These are from my notes. Probably long vocal lines, like that's going to just cause us to activate reserve volume function, and that could cause, again, some triggering, some stress on the trachea, and that could then lead to other issues. And the other thing too is you don't want to disregard it as just being, something that's, just a passing thing. If you were ever of concern that this is something that you could be suffering from, then the only person that could diagnose this would be an ears, nose and throat doctor. I then thought maybe a pulmonologist, someone who works with lungs, could be another person that might find themselves diagnosing, but certainly it have to be a medical team. I found that, and this will come as no surprise to you, everyone, I found that a really interesting little side thing to explore. So that is Idiopathic Subglottic Stenosis, and fascinating. Really, really fascinating condition. Challenging, I mean, my fascination should not undermine how challenging that would be for a person who sings, because I think that's going to create some things to overcome and work through, work alongside. Yeah, interesting. I hope the rest of you found that interesting. Bradley has asked, I have been doing live streams, and when I keep singing higher, and everyone, oh no, Rebecca's just come in with a question. I've been doing live streams. When I keep singing higher, I sometimes tend to crack. Any advice on how to sing a performance with plenty of high notes and no cracking? Bradley, I can appreciate why. Actually, before I go any further, if you were right here, well, I guess you are right here, I would ask you the follow-up question of, are you noticing this only when you are live, as in performance mode, or are you also noticing it, when you're practicing in rehearsal? If you're only noticing it in your live setting, then it well could be that you are getting a little bit too excited. The adrenaline is driving you, causing you to drive the voice too hard. And so learning to back that energy, that effort off, and bring it back into that zone on a technical level that is in keeping with how you've rehearsed would be a good thing. It is all too easy in live presentations to find ourselves pushing and driving the voice just that little bit harder, simply because we're a bit excited, we're a bit energized by the experience of the live. If, however, you are also experiencing it in your rehearsal, then I think that probably leads to the fact that you do need to work on breath flow and the way you are managing registration and your movement into those upper registers while the voice is under load. But I would go on to add that there would be, and we've talked about this before, Bradley, you've probably been on the show when we have, I would go to add that there is nothing wrong with transposing your songs down. It might only need to be half a step, a whole step, one whole tone, and just bring it off that edge. You never want to go into a performance knowing that the only way you can hit your top notes, and let's recognize that top notes in a performance, they're only 3 or 4% of your entire performance. But I understand they can occupy a lot of your time and mental energy because you're concerned about, am I going to hit them? But if you go into a performance and you know that the only way you can hit those top notes if you are in absolutely perfect vocal condition, then I would present to you the argument that then that's not a good place to have set yourself up, because in one sense you're almost certainly on a percentage basis setting yourself up for failure, because you are. I think this is even a generous presentation, a generous percentage. I reckon we're only ever in our absolute best vocal condition 1 out of 10 performances. The rest of the time, particularly if you're a working singer, and Bradley, now that you're doing these regular live streams, you are needing the voice to be on every time. The reality is you are likely to be managing your vocal condition, even if it's only 90%. Well, 90% could take you away from being able to have those 2 or 3% excellent top notes. Do you see what I'm getting at? And so if you just adjust the keys of your song by tone, it can be literally only that, then it just brings everything back into a safety zone that you can be more comfortable with, more confident in, and hopefully that, will be good. And it's not to say that we do that to avoid having to work on our technique. No, technique is definitely going to play its role, of course, but there are points in our development where the technique is not yet as solid as we want it to be, and therefore the notes are not yet as solid as we want them to be, and so changing the key of a song down by a tone can be helpful. Bradley, I hope that helps. There's a question here from Rebecca. If I can find it, Rebecca, I've got to find it first. I'm looking. Here we go. This is a question. A question directed to me. Dr. Dan, what is your favourite song to sing on Sunday mornings? For those of you who don't know, I do lead worship in my own very, very, very small community church here in Brisbane. In fact, I'm leading on Sunday. I play and sing. What is my favourite song? Do you know, I don't know that I've got a favourite song, Rebecca. When I'm leading worship, I really feel that my job, the task for me in that moment, is to facilitate congregational singing, and so often I'm thinking about the key. Again, we're talking about keys of songs today. I'm trying to work the key not for my betterment, but for the congregational voice. And so to have a key that is going to generally sit comfortable for the congregation by virtue of my own voice type, a high tenor, that means that it is not uncommon for the keys that I have to choose to sing in for the congregational voice to be comfortable. My voice doesn't always sit comfortably, because it's not in that moment, and Rebecca, I know you understand this, in that moment it's not about me, it's about facilitating others. And so that often leaves me with not really having a song. I can hear you, Rebecca, already saying, yes, but Daniel, what is your favorite? So you're pushing me to answer, to give. I like singing a lot of older, really old, when I say old, we're talking early 90s, mid-90s Hillsong, particularly by Jeff Bullock and Reuben Morgan. So there you go. I enjoy singing those melodies, and if I get to choose my own key, often that will bring about a comfortable and an enjoyable song. Rebecca, does that help? We're up to 15 votes. Gee, that has moved around. I'm looking at the results, everyone, and I hadn't looked at it until then. That is a completely different list of results than I looked at, just before. Interesting. It's always interesting. I'm a tease, aren't I? I will reveal the results a little bit later. Patricia has asked a question. Oh, before we get to Patricia's question, Patricia has made a comment. That was an interesting question. I think you're referring to Piano Man's one about idiopathic. Oh, how do you say it? Idiopathic subglottic stenosis. Never heard of that medical problem as an older singer. It's good to know of it. Yeah, it is. Though, Patricia, I do note once again that it's most common in perimenopausal women. So perhaps as an older singer, that might not be of too much of a concern to you. I'm presupposing a lot there, aren't I? Okay. But Patricia goes on to ask, is there any relationship between vocal fry and tongue trills in execution? Yeah, there's plenty. Vocal fry is happening at the level of the vocal folds themselves, and we are hopefully purposefully, causing a disturbance in the ripple wave of the ripple wave motion of the vocal folds to create vocal fry. And that can be texturized, and there's a whole range of things you can do with that, but it's happening there. Then when we get to tongue trills, then the vocal folds, and certainly how we would typically want to use tongue trills, we want a really clean, clear, balanced oscillation of the vocal folds to create a very clean, clear, balanced tone. And then as you are, fluctuating the... Is that a word? Fluctuating. Is that a word? You know how sometimes I say these words and I go, is that a word? Fluctuation of the tongue, then that's where we're getting the activity, the action. And so most certainly there is a distinct difference, Patricia, between those two. Interesting question. Would be interested to find out what led you to ask that question. Darkus is, I would like to go to college for music to a AAS degree in music. Is it hard for piano and voice? Well, first of all, Darkus, I don't know. AAS degree, is that an American? That's not an Australian way to say it. I don't know what an AAS. Can someone tell me in the chat what an AAS degree is? While I wait for someone to put that into the chat, I'm just going to respond to the question on the surface. It can be quite challenging, Darkus, to get into music degrees. Mostly because, firstly, certainly here in Australia, and again, I have to be careful to orientate my response purely to my Australian experience. Here in Australia, in a lot of music degrees, certainly your better well-known ones that are kind of places like the Queensland Conservatorium where I went, there are limited numbers that can be taken on, and so they have a quota of students that they can take through the door. That quota is always, more than 10 to 1. They are always only able to take far less than who audition. And therein lies the key word, audition, right? You have to front up and display your abilities in, as they stand in that moment. And that's not to say they're expecting you to be, have it all together, because if you had it all together, you wouldn't need to go and do a music degree in piano and voice. But you are competing against sometimes hundreds of other people, and they might only be able to take 10, 15, 20 interns. That's not what we call them, students, newbies, freshmen. And so it can be very hard to get in. And when a course is not purely based on that kind of entrance, they then can be very, very expensive. So you might not, the challenge might not be auditioning and having a successful audition. The challenge simply might be the price point. They can be very expensive. And one of I think the greatest challenges facing young people today for not just music degrees, but degrees certainly within the creative arts industries as a whole is, and I'm thinking more about performance arts, there is no guaranteed job at the end of doing that said course. And so often we're paying, significant amounts of money for education, which I strongly believe in, but we're not coming out the other end. My daughter went to university and became a nurse. Do the degree, become a nurse. My wife went to college, went to university, did a degree, became a teacher. When we go to a degree to become a like a musician, we do the degree, but that doesn't then make you a musician. You actually go in already being a singer or a musician. It's just the pathway of tertiary education, hopefully, is designed to refine you as a musician or a singer and make you better. But that still is no guarantee that you're going to get work on the other end. And so that's actually the biggest challenge. Yes, it is hard. You asked the question, Darkus, is it hard? Yeah, it is hard. Darkus, oh, there we go. Linda's thrown up there, Associate of Applied Sciences. It's like a bachelor, okay, here in Australia. All right. Darkus, it would be a community college in the US. Yeah, this is not, yeah, but Darkus, coming back to this issue of is it hard? Well, anything worth doing is challenging. Yeah, it is going to be hard. Yeah, you are going to have to apply yourself. There is going to be a lot of practice, particularly around your piano work. But if you are passionate about it, then go for it. But do so with a really deep understanding that the degree is not going to make you employable or give you gigs. There are many people who have successful music careers who didn't travel that, route. What I think one of the big benefits of doing a music degree is recognizing that there aren't many, certainly, and I have to talk to the Australian context. There aren't many, high-paying jobs for singers that, will help you pay for a mortgage and feed and clothe children if that's your choice in life. And so if you've got a music degree under your belt, then it opens up the option for you at a later time, if you want to perhaps add an educational postgrad onto the other side of that, and to become a music teacher or what have you. So it does create options, and that's, I think, one of its strongest things. They still call me Ricky, has asked this question. How do I know which tone is my best tone? I think I do a lot of mimicry when it comes to covers. That is such a subjective question. They still call me Ricky, because what one person think is your best tone, another might not think is your best tone. And what you think is your best tone may not be what others think is your best tone. And what I mean by that is you are hearing yourself so uniquely to the rest of the world through bone conduction, sympathetic vibrations. You hear yourself in a very unique way. Herein lies the great benefit of individual singing lessons with a singing teacher, is you get that constant feedback from the teacher, who almost certainly has a really well-trained ear to know where to help you with your tone. Certainly, for beginner singers, we do tend to start out mimicking, emulating other singers. We do this on a really interestingly on a generational level. When I first started teaching back in the mid and late 90s, every female singer who walked through the door sounded like Celine Dion and Whitney Houston, or at least wanted to sound like these singers. And then we come to now, and nearly every single singer, young female singer, sounds like Billie Eilish. Like it's there is a generational sound that tends to move through, and I think that's partly driven by our listening. What are we mostly consuming on an auditory level? And then how does that then affect the way we use our voice? And so what we have to recognize, first, I don't think that's a bad thing in the initial sense, because I think it's very normal. But we do want to move towards a way in which we can identify and develop our own vocal signature. And you are right to recognize, they still call me Ricky, that developing your tone is going to be a part of that. But tone's only one part of it. It's going to be, you're going to need to develop your phrasing, articulation, vocal effects. And this is all going to have to be in keeping with the kind of genre that you want to focus in on. And that's not to say you only have to focus on one, but to start with, that could be a good thing to do. That is currently our last question, which is probably good because we're coming up to the end. We've had 15 votes today for our live, and if you're sitting there right now and you haven't filled out the live chat, I'm going to give you a couple more seconds to do so, and then I'm going to end the poll. I think it's really, I've just seen this response from They Still Call Me Ricky. That was a wonderful answer, wonderful and kind answer to my question. Thank you. You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. Oh, we're still at. Well, I'm going to close this. Okay. Yeah, Rebecca's given us. Here we go. Drum roll, please, Rebecca. Brrr, drum roll. Oh, that's a shame. It doesn't show up. It doesn't show up there. Everyone will see. Everyone will see your drum roll once I close the poll, Rebecca. So here we go. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Here's the results, everyone. What's your biggest flex as a singer? Now, that was really interesting. When we first started the show, power without pushing hard was the bottom of the list. It was evenly spread, but it was kind of back down where nailing every vocal run is. And now, yeah, Linda's saying, ooh, interesting. I agree, Linda. I think this one's really interesting because to start with, owning the stage presence was the leading, and I honestly thought, yeah, that makes sense to me. People can feel more comfortable about developing that skill. But you know, learning to power without pushing hard, that's not easy to do, and yet many of you feel that's one of your strengths. I think that's awesome. And of course we want to develop all of these things, but it's good for us to be able to recognize where our strengths lie. In recognizing what your strength is, I wonder what you would now, and you can quickly write this into the chat. I wonder, out of that list, so you know what you put down as your strength, what is the weaker of your other three? How would you list that out? And maybe that's an opportunity for you to think about working on this week. Death to the ashes. Oh, I wonder what that means. Death to the ashes. Maybe I don't want to know. But Death to the Ashes has asked one final question, and then we are going to finish after Death to the Ashes question. Here in Australia, for those of you who don't know, we have a competition between Australia and England in cricket called the Ashes. So Death to the Ashes in Australia would mean a very particular thing, saying basically death to cricket. And as a cricket lover, I take offence. Not really. Question: is it true that the amount of belly hang after each line is the only true way to be as open as possible? For example, singing a line and immediately in the breath back by relaxing. Yes, there is some truth in that. I think the devil is in the detail. We do need to have a good sense of release through the abdominis, rectus abdominis, the transverse abdominis, basically your belly. The amount of release that you can get can be driven by just how much time you do or don't have between each phrase. But yeah, you do want to have a release. Now, when I use the word release is very much it's not an active push out of the tummy wall. It's really important. I was talking about this very thing with a student on Friday. It is not a push out. It is a release. In accent method, which is a particular methodology around breath, they use the term splat. Singers, please loosen abdominal tension. I personally just find that a mouthful, and so I just say release. But singers, please loosen abdominal tension. Blah, splat is a good way to think of it. To release that abdominal wall, it allows the diaphragm to efficiently, effectively contract downwards, and you are going to get a better quality of intake. Good breath management is not purely about the quality of exhale, but like it's all important. So one can't say one's more important than the other, but it is as important to have a quality inhale and death to the ashes. You are in the right zone thinking about a good release of your tummy muscles between phrases for good breath. Patricia has said here, I incorrectly put power, but truth is owning the stage would have been my answer. Would that have changed the result? Well, yeah, it probably would have, Patricia, but I can't go back and change it, I'm afraid. The results are as they are, but thank you for clarifying. I think it would have, it probably would, I'm not great with quick, percentage mathematics, but maybe it would have tilted it the other way so that owning the stage presence would have been on top at 40% and the other one at 33. I don't know. But anyway, well, I'm not going to be presenting these statistics at any conference, so I think it's okay. These are just straw polls; they're fun, and it is good to run them. I hope you've enjoyed today's live hangout, and wasn't that fascinating? Well, I found it fascinating talking about idiopathic subglottic stenosis, and there are things that can go wrong with our bodies. And I remember when Jodie, my wife, and some of you may not know, but my wife, coming up on 8 years ago, was diagnosed with bowel cancer. She is now through that and is completely 100% recovered and healthy. But at the time, when we were asking all the questions, this is literally days after diagnosis, and we're talking with the surgeon, and he was explaining, oh no, it might have been the oncologist. We were talking about what is the cancer and how does it work, and he said, oh, it's how the cells, the cells break down, they start creating cancer cells and whatever, and the fact that our bodies produce cancer cells all the time, but our body cleans them out. And he made the comment that it's amazing that, on one hand, it's amazing that happens. On another hand, what's more amazing about cancer is that it doesn't happen more often, that our bodies are so well equipped to manage bad cells. And I think about that when I think about, issues like idiopathic subglottic stenosis. It is amazing to me that issues like this are not more prevalent. Our bodies are wonderfully adaptable and resilient, and we never want to find ourselves becoming fearful or wrapping our voices up in cotton wool, particularly as contemporary singers, when we think about the fact that we do need to take risks, calculated, educated risks with our voice, because that's exciting. And audiences will pay good money to see you and hear you do that. But we do that with a great sense of care and developed technique. And so there you go. Cool. I hope you've enjoyed today. I have. Hit the like button if you have, and let the algorithm know. And I very much look forward to seeing you next week when we have another special guest. Aren't we? We're so fortunate with the special guests that we have here on the show. Until next week, I'll see you again soon. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.